when I had a coach, emotional intelligence coach is like what I like to call her, is teaching me on my emotional intelligence. She basically was able to share with me how this vision of buying a Tesla, I was able to drive it. I was able to sit in it. She took a picture of it. I put it on the side of my office wall, and I looked at this thing every day of me sitting in this Tesla. And 11 months later, I was able to purchase my first Tesla, my Tesla X. And to me, I was like, holy crap, this is real.
And I think if anybody can learn anything from that concept is disconnect from the result, focus on the process, and you'll get there so much faster. I know you, similar to me, grew up in a household where at some point, maybe financially, it wasn't super affluent, right? And
most definitely not, bro.
not only wasn't, but you said absolutely not. We were not affluent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about where you've gotten today. You have $1 million agency, right? And just for people who don't know what that means a business that's creating $1 million a year in revenue at least, or more, right? How does that feel coming from humble beginnings?
And to be able to be surrounded by people that have either been there, I always kind of think of it as a trail guide. If somebody's going to hike to the top of Mount Everest, if I was going to do that, I would hire somebody that's been there to the top several times. I don't want to hire somebody that, or I don't want to do it on my own. That's dumb.
Marketing agencies are often very difficult to sell unless certain things are true. But if these certain things are true, which I'm about to teach you, you can exit at a 5, 6, 7x multiple.
Beyond your paycheck, it's surges of cash that you can use to grow your net worth and feed your investments.
Welcome back to another episode of the Surges of Income podcast. I'm your host, Chris Moore. Today I have a very special guest with me, Spencer Hart. Before I introduce you to Spencer, if it's your first time listening to the podcast, Surges of Income, what the heck is it? Surges of Income is exactly like it sounds. It's money that comes in very quickly above and beyond your normal paycheck or what you make from owning a business. It comes from the sale of a property. It comes from an IPO, an exit event from a business. It comes from launching a new product using digital marketing or even selling at a live event. But either way, that's how wealth is made, wealth that can go directly to investments. So Spencer, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. I'm so excited to tell the listeners more about you. We want to hear your story. So let's start there. Who is Spencer Hart?
Yeah, so I own a marketing agency called Spray Foam Genius Marketing. It's been around only for the last 2 years after we niched down from being a generalized agency that was marketing to contractors.
So marketing agency, so specifically contractors, is that home service contractors? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we started off in 2019 as a generalized agency that was marketing to all home service niches. It was anything from roofing to landscaping to deck and fence. And through one of your guys' programs that you're involved with Rank Masters, I was encouraged to find a niche and niche down. And so we've niched down to insulation contractors only, given the name Spray Foam Genius Marketing.
Love it, man. Anybody who hasn't ever learned about niching down, niches make riches bitches. That's what we say, right? Excuse my language. Yeah. And then if you follow Alex Hermosi, he talks about when he hears people getting too broad on their customer avatars and the people they're focusing on selling to, he said, I'm a niche slap you. He's like, you got to be niche down. So I love the fact that you niche down. And when you niche down, what did you see? What happened to the business?
Dude, we became an expert. We became the trusted go-to marketing company within the niche, within the business space. It's, the analogy, Chris, I always tell people is it'd be, you come from the med spa space, and I'm sure your listeners know that. It would be like if you went to a nose doctor to get your boobs done, right? When you're like you need to be an expert to be trusted within the industry, because for us, when we were trying to become the experts in landscaping, deck and fence, roofing, you can't build a brand, you can't build a name. Nor we are very general as well. My mother company is called Plant Powered Marketing. It doesn't really stand out. It doesn't make you really an expert within the field. Now that we're really niched down, we're targeting really that high ticket spray foam contractors. Now we're that expert. We're the authority.
I think that's smart. So anybody who's listening, I want you to listen very carefully to what Spencer just said. I mean, it's all about being a trusted, safe pair of hands when you're someone who's asking for someone to spend money with you to see a result, right? So analogy I use a lot all the time, Spencer, is kind of the concept of marketing. Is it investing or is it gambling, right? When you're marketing and you're investing your marketing dollars with somebody who is not necessarily a specialist, that has a proven track record, who's literally out there crushing it for exactly what your business needs, working with companies just like yours almost exclusively, it's really not investing that, it's gambling that, right? Because gambling relies on chance or luck, or compared to investing is when you're expecting and you can predict a return on investment, right? So I think niching down is really smart. If you want to know more about Rank Masters, that's the program that Spencer mentioned. So that's our marketing agency mastermind, where we teach marketing agencies how to niche down and how to offer and grow their business. Patrick Shannon, who's been on a previous episode of the podcast, is my partner in that business. And I think it's a really powerful thing for you to niche down. So real quick, I know the answer, but let's talk to you and tell everybody else why. Why did you choose spray foam contractors and insulation contractors over everything else?
Yeah. So when I was encouraged by yourself and Patrick to niche down, the struggle was, I mean, we were so broad. What do we niche down to? Where can we find a gap within all these other niches to be able to stand out? So when I started looking back at my portfolio of clients that we had 2 successful clients in the spray foam industry. One was in Manhattan and one was in Baton Rouge. And when we start looking at the success that we had with those clients, it was very obvious that we knocked it out of the park for them. And then the other piece of this, you guys, that we are looking at is we need something that's high ticket. When you look at something like landscaping, I know my landscaper, my lawn guy, I pay him $60 a mow. If we think about that, he's making $60 a week off me. How many mows does this guy have to do in order to be able to justify a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 monthly marketing ticket? That's a lot of mows that I have to bring that guy. And so I needed to find something that was high ticket. Average ticket for spray foam contractors is somewhere around, $8,000 to $12,000, $14,000 a job. And so when you go to those guys and you say, hey, give me $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, they say, oh, wow, that's basically 1, maybe 2 leads a month that this guy gives me that I close, that I'm able to justify to spend that type of cash.
Yeah. So when we teach this a lot, Spencer, and you've been through this with us many, many times, but the concept for me is twofold. One, can we find something that needs marketing to survive? Number one. And number two, a type of business that has that average ticket value that is high enough to allow us to charge high prices. Like you said, Chris, you're from the med spa space. So anybody listening may or may not know that. I used to be a partner in a medical marketing agency, med spas, dermatology, plastic surgery, regenerative medicine, ophthalmology, things like that. And it was extremely high ticket. It was cash pay. And since it's cash pay, these practices needed marketing. They needed foot traffic in the door. They need to have lots of consultations. So I think the same is with what you picked at spray foam and insulation, high ticket, and they need marketing. Something that's not a necessity or an emergency service, right? Imagine a plumber who's fixing hot water heaters that broke. Like, they have probably plenty of leads. You can always get them more. And it's really only worth about $1,200 tops per appointment. But somebody who needs lots of opportunities is more likely to spend money in marketing continuously. So I think that niche has been really good for you. I know you have had quite the journey. I'd like to talk about that a little bit. But since the topic of my podcast in general is all around surges of income, how to make lots of money, let's tie that concept to marketing agency ownership right now. So I have a focus and a dream. I want to build a marketing agency as well, something not in the medical space, but in the home services space as well. And I want to build it to sell from the very beginning, right? If you go read the book, Build to Sell, he talks about, coincidentally, it's a story, and he talks about Alex Stapleton from the Stapleton agency. He uses a marketing agency as the main character, and he takes them through this process of almost productizing all of his offering, getting away from being a jack of all trades and offering all these different things to every different client, and really building the business so it has the ability to run without him, where he could literally go off on an island with Tupac and Elvis for 30 days and the business is still humming without him, right? So with all that being said, one, have you read Built to Sell? And number two, is this part of your journey? Are you looking to have that exit one day and that large surge of income from building this agency?
Yeah, Built to Sell is most definitely a book on my list to read. And in building this to sell, this is going to be a tool for me to be able to use the cash flow in order to diversify and in order to increase my net worth, as well as bridge that generational wealth gap.
Yeah, I know you, similar to me, grew up in a household where at some point maybe financially it wasn't super affluent, right? And
Most definitely not, bro.
so not only wasn't, but you said absolutely not. We were not affluent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about where you've gotten today. You have $1 million agency, right? And just for people who don't know what that means a business that's creating $1 million a year in revenue, at least, or more, right? How does that feel coming from humble beginnings to this point? Is it surreal? Does it feel like you need to pinch yourself just to make sure it's actually happening? How does your mindset change after you've kind of gotten away from survival mode, being much more comfortable?
Yeah, as you mentioned, didn't grow up in a wealthy household. I always tell people I grew up in a mindset poor household as well as a financial poor household. I grew up with parents that always said things like, you can be anything you want to be, all these type of cliche things, yet they were stuck in dead end jobs. They worked dead end careers. They worked up until retirement age. And I never saw, those sayings ever actually come true for them. And so as growing up in a household, you're a product of that environment. So when COVID hit in 2020, it was almost like I gave myself permission to actually start believing in mindset and start changing as a human, and say, like, let's give this thing a shot. Let's see what this manifestation, what this mindset, like what all this stuff can actually do. I started working on myself. I joke around and say Spencer 2.0 was born around that period of time, because I actually started to change. My wife was like, holy crap, who is this guy? And I bought in. We'll just say I bought in, Chris. And when I bought in, things, and some people that maybe aren't believers in energy and manifestation think it's bullcrap. But with hard work, you can't just sit there and be sitting at your house dreaming about a lifestyle and not working to actually get there. But pushing on a daily basis, having goals. Vision boards was something that I thought people made, that it was just kind of like more like an arts and crafts project, not actually something that actually people that dreams came true off that. So my first experience with manifestation was when I had a coach, emotional intelligence coach is like what I like to call her, is teaching me on my emotional intelligence. She basically was able to share with me how, with this vision of buying a Tesla, I was able to drive it. I was able to sit in it. She took a picture of it. I put it on the side of my my office wall, and I looked at this thing every day of me sitting in this Tesla. And 11 months later, I was able to purchase my first Tesla, my Tesla X. And to me, I was like, holy crap, this is real. And really, it proved to myself at that period of time that whatever you put your mind to and whatever those goals are, you can accomplish it. As well as surrounding myself with amazing people like yourself and Patrick and my other coaches is really what's been able to get me to that next level, because it took me out of that fight or flight, that poor mindset that I was basically raised in. And now that I've been able to start to really create some wealth, I feel like the sky's the limit now.
It's amazing how different the world can feel when you have resources, right? And it's one of those things where I live in an area that's not super affluent, and there's definitely a very different dynamic here for people if they feel like I'm rich or they think I'm rich, like the way they get treated a little bit. But it's one of those things where, like you said, in your household, the mindset was poor, not just the finances. There's a lot of poor mindsets out there. And I think it's because people don't feel like they can be any bigger than they are today. So anybody listening on the podcast, not just watching, I want you to envision a water bottle, right? And I'm holding one up right here. A lot of people live in a water bottle where the lid is tight. and they look up and all they can see is the water bottle lid. And that's as big as their world can ever get. But I think what happens sometimes, you had a moment in 2020 where someone took the lid off your jar and you realize, wow, I can be so much bigger than I am. I see all these billboards where I live that says something like tear through the paper ceiling. And it is a billboard and it has this young man on it. It's almost like saying, hey, kids, no matter your environment you're growing up in, you can be something bigger than that. Right. And I think that's a very powerful thing that you said. So weird. You weren't at my event this last weekend, right? But I just hosted this massive event in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms. And I'll share my screen with you here. I was actually teaching something called the art of doing hard shit. Do you see my screen?
I see it.
Pretty cool. So people who are listening on Spotify, Apple, whatever, you would be seeing my screen where I'm talking about the concept of doing hard shit and how do you actually do this? And what you said was really, really applicable. What I talked about is how there's actually a silent enemy inside of every one of us. And the name of that enemy is called subconscious reluctance. And essentially, subconsciously, we're fully reluctant to make a change for the better. Our bodies and our minds and our subconscious, they all work together to keep us kind of safe and keep us in the status quo. And they don't like change. But really, if you went through that entire lesson that I spoke on, and I'll probably post it on my YouTube so you can see it. If you want to go check out Chris Moore Speaks on YouTube, we talk about the only way to fix this is to radically re-engineer your external environment, right? And the reason why we have these issues is because our external environment opposes our goals. So I went through this entire training from stage, 300 or 400 people in the audience, talking about how we can re-engineer our external environment, which actually controls everything in our internal environment. So it sounds like what you had was exactly that moment where all of a sudden you had a big enough reason to re-engineer your external environment. And that's really what your external surroundings. It's the people you hang out with, the information you let in your brain, the food you put in your body. Like what we have on the outside actually determines what's on the inside. And you had this moment where you changed everything. And sometimes those moments, Spencer, come from a death in the family. Sometimes they come from a near death experience. Sometimes they come from people hitting rock bottom. Sometimes they're just so powerful that something pushes them to the next level. But for whatever reason, you had one, luckily, and you had enough reason to change. So fast forward towards where we are today. We were together in Gatlinburg back in July. We had a Rank Masters event, which is our mastermind for marketing agency owners, like we talked about earlier. And you got a award very similar to the one right behind my head that we had custom made for you because you crossed over that threshold of really having an agency that makes over $83,000 a month, which is that $1 million agency runway. Like if you continue that for a year, you'll be at $1 million. And I remember you weren't expecting necessarily that award. You didn't know it would be modeled after the ClickFunnels award, but I remember your face when that happened. And what it meant to me when I saw you get that award, when I handed it to you, is it felt like the most validating moment I've seen in a long time. It's almost like this token, this trophy means that it's real and that I made it. So what was going through your head when that happened?
Yeah, man. Just honestly, even thinking about it today chokes me up. Coming from where you and I both have come from, not growing up in, financial, wealthy households, watching our parents struggle. And, the money piece for me, Chris, is just a tool to be able to live the life that I want to live. I think a lot of times we're programmed. Sometimes when you run things by your kids, it really puts things into perspective. And when your kids are 12 and you're in your 40s, they think you're extremely old. And I remember I was sitting at a dinner table, and to me, I feel like I'm just getting my life started. As we know, the average millionaire isn't created until they're 50. Average billionaire, I think, is 60. And a lot of times, when you run things by the kids, they put things in perspective. So I told them, I said, I want to retire in the next 5 years. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, can you imagine your dad working for another 20 years before he retires? And then I get to enjoy my life. And they were like shocked. They were like, they already think you're super old already. And so to really get to a spot where I start to be able to change the generational wealth is huge for me. To be able to take my family on family vacations, to create memories, because this life is about memories. This life isn't about the big mansion on the hill and the fancy cars. It's really about the memories for me. Because I never had that as a kid. I never went on a family vacation. We had barely enough money to even feed ourselves and eat. So to be able to get that award, I've talked about it on my own social clips. It really was like a validation that I have arrived. And the mindset shift that happens with that as well is I now walk around as $1 million business owner. I don't walk around as this my history, my past. Yes, that is who's defined me. But now I walk around, and I don't want to say like it's like a swagger a little bit. You know what I mean? Not a cocky swagger, but like, a humble swagger. And so yeah, getting an award from Rank Masters, as well as being the first student to cross over that $1 million agency mark, it's been huge.
It's beautiful to hear. To set the record straight, I lived in kind of a lower income household and middle class household, kind of back and forth. So it was interesting for me as a kid. I got to see both sides of it. And I think perspective is massive. I think as you grow up, having perspective of what could be true and what you have to work for to earn is very valuable. So I got to have both sides. And I think a few of my friends also lived in a world where they've seen both sides, and it allows you to make a more conscious choice. In your environment, you got to see, I don't want my kids to end up growing up with the same environment I had, and you had enough reason to change, which is beautiful. But thanks for sharing that. I know that it's a little emotional. For me, I have a mantra, and maybe you've heard me say this before, Spencer, but I like to think about the idea of staying humble no matter how successful I get. It is just easily said with this one statement, which is, I'm just getting started. Like, no matter how high we reach, we're just getting started. The other big thing that I like to think about all the time is, why do we need to focus on a destination? We should have goals and targets, and we should be reaching for, they say, big, hairy, audacious goals. But at the same time, the journey itself is so much more beautiful than the destination, right? Also, I believe when we focus on just heavily on destinations, we tend to get fixated and we lose track compared to staying focused on the process. So I know for you to get to where you got to in your MRR, monthly recurring revenue, you probably had your head down. You probably didn't stare at it every 5 seconds. You were just sales call, close, focus on retention, get more prospects, close, focus on retention. And when you started focusing on that process, I remember your journey. It went from taking 2 years down to condensing down to about 3 months, and you just almost doubled your business, right? And I think if anybody can learn anything from that concept is disconnect from the result, focus on the process, and you'll get there so much faster, right? For you, it's a pretty simple concept in a marketing agency. It's prospecting, having sales calls, closing, and then fulfilling and giving them a wow experience. If you can continuously keep that going, right? And you have plenty of prospects, you have plenty of sales calls, you've got great systems and processes to give them a wow experience, you can build a pretty big agency pretty quick. And we have moments that humble us. We have moments where we have to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. That's going to happen to you again and again. But knowing that you have the process down now, like, all right, I know how to do it. If I needed to get 20 new clients in the next 3 months, all I got to do is focus on these 3 things. And that's how businesses are really built. So I don't want to just continue to dominate this conversation in this moment, but I want to shift focuses a little bit, right? We talked about Built to Sell a little earlier. That will be your homework, Spencer, is read that book, because you're going to say to me, I wish I would have read it a year ago. The moment you read it, call me, right? But I want to talk about that concept. Built to Sell, since this is Surges of Income podcast, I want to talk about how we could help Spencer today turn his business he's building into an opportunity to have a giant surge of cash. So first thing I want to tell you about, anybody else is listening, watching can also hear this, is marketing agencies are often very difficult to sell unless certain things are true. But if these certain things are true, which I'm about to teach you, you can exit at a 5, 6, 7x multiple, right? So I'm just going to assume somebody in the call or on this podcast doesn't know how that works. Businesses are valued at a multiple of something called EBITDA, right? And that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So essentially, that's a fancy way of saying your total profit for the year minus these things, add backs, is this number. If you can get that business to profit $1 million a year, $1 million in EBITDA, you can sell that at 5, 6, 7x multiple, right? So imagine getting into that point. So I think the first thing you do is begin with the end in mind. I'd love to have the ability 2, 3, 4 years from now to sell it for $7 million. Wouldn't that be pretty badass, right? So to do that, let's talk about what has to be true. And I want to ask you some questions, right? So number one, the business has to have the ability to operate without you. At the end of the day, you can't be here wearing all these different hats, right? You have to be able to say, okay, I could step off that to an island with Tupac and Elvis, like I mentioned, for 30 days, 60 days, and the business continues to run without me. So one of the first things you do in any business that gets that size is you want to have somebody in charge of like middle management, right? You have sales and marketing, you've got operations, and you've got CFO/HR, right? So I think in your business, one of the things that would be really cool over the next year or two is to continuously replace yourself and be able to have somebody else get the same quality output as if you were doing the work yourself. So anybody listening to this or watching, the typical agency is usually broken down where the actual owner gets rid of sales last. They usually take sales and hold on to it as long as they can. Usually they're the person making a lot of the relationships. And then you really let go of the fulfillment first. Your SEO, who's managing this, who's building the website. So in your agency, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit, kind of what's the structure currently and what hats are you still wearing?
Yeah, so I would say I'm currently still wearing the operations hat. It's just right now, we have a team of 30 plus employees that are worldwide, and being able to, a lot of the fulfillment piece is taken, the account manager stuff's taken care of. A lot of it has to do with really the next two hires is operations manager that we're looking at, as well as an SEO strategist. Right now, I'm kind of telling the team like, hey, this is where we're going. We need to be, hey, we're not getting the results over here. We needed to be doing X, Y, and Z. So a lot of like the methods, the strategies, I'm still wearing that hat because, I'm the expert currently at that. So those are the next two big hires for us, Chris.
I think that's smart. On the sales side, I know you have somebody working with you on the sales side as well as you can still sell. But if you look at what would have to be true for you to be able to have a sellable business and have it operate without you, there's three things. One, it has to operate without you. Number two, it's got to be productized to the point where you're really solving the same problems again and again, rather than having to solve a different problem for each client. Like, I think you've already done that as well. You've got very similar packages. Everyone buys a similar package, maybe a little bit of here and there is different. And then the third thing is it needs to have really good transfer value. Like the idea of transfer value, there's many things here. One, the relationships would have to transfer easily. Like, you wouldn't have to have too much of the customer relationships revolve around you specifically. Like, if you left, they would leave. Another thing is customer concentration, making sure that not too much of your revenue is all from one customer. So I think the way you're building your business now, where you have lots and lots and lots of clients and they're all paying you about the same amount of money, you're really set up well for that. And I think as soon as you can get that operations manager in play, where the relationships aren't just directly with you and you can transfer that trust to somebody else or to the brand itself, that's going to be huge. And then the one more thing is like the idea of a machine that can create more prospects continuously without your efforts, right? And even eventually making it so you don't have to be in every video. So I think even without reading Built to Sell, I'm impressed with what you're doing already. You're already on your way, which is huge. But I think just for the theme of what we do here at Surges of Income podcast, especially talking about business acquisitions and business exits, I like to discuss this kind of stuff because sometimes I find that some people haven't really considered it that much. But if you can go ahead and build it as you're going through this journey with the end in mind, you'll thank me later. Like, there's a lot of money to be made there. Imagine $7 million coming in, even if it's $5 million up front, the rest of it over a couple of years. I mean, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot of money. I've taken, I guess, 4 exits so far. And that's one of the things that just got me fascinated with Surges of Income, selling properties and getting multiple 6-figure checks, taking exits and getting large checks. Like, was able to focus on investing and growing my net worth very quickly with those surges. And I know that if I can pass that same beautiful victory on to somebody else, I want to do it. So yeah, let's talk about your agency for just a few minutes. So you've got operations is going to be the next hire. You've got somebody who can do sales. You've got a really good marketing machine so far. And I know your business very well. You have pretty redundant prospecting strategies as well, where you're getting prospects in from several different things. You've got some paid ads, you've got some direct message systems, you've got some people that are building out referrals and sending referrals, right? So beyond that, let's talk about your offer for a second. So productization, are you familiar with that concept?
Yep.
So productizing just essentially is, I want to have something that is not a service, but a product. And it allows you to be able to solve the same problem again and again. And when you read that book, it'll dive into that more. So your offer currently, are you offering mostly the same thing to every person?
Yeah, like three variations, depending on the person's needs. Now, obviously, sometimes people come to us and their need isn't the same. And I don't believe in everybody has the same problem to solve. So we first get on a discovery call and figure out what are you looking to solve. Because as you've sometimes people are just looking for immediate injection of kind of the business, and they need leads now. Other times people are like, hey, we're good right now, but I'd like to be kicking all my competitors' butts here in 6 months. Mm-hmm. And so that looks totally different. That's more of the SEO play versus a lead gen, a pay-per-click situation or pay-per-lead type of situation. So
yeah, I think it's good to have multiple packages, but the playbook around how to fulfill this, your team knows exactly what to do. Yeah. Here's the handoff. All right, team, you know what to do. Go for it. And I think that's a big part of it. I remember for our agency, the beauty of what we did is really build that assembly line where we literally had a group of people. Everybody knew their role. Once a client came in, we onboarded them, gave them a wow experience, and handed it off to the team. Mm-hmm. Right? That's beautiful. So I want to talk about a few more things here before we end, Spencer. You've had some things in life that have gone great. You've had some things that haven't gone great. One thing I love to do on the Surges of Income podcast is share kind of aha moments, because I think in general that your experiences and those things that you've done in your life that have created these moments of self-awareness or introspection, and you've had these lessons that you've learned, having the ability to pass those on to other people is really powerful. So with all the stuff you've gone through, and we don't have to talk about all the hardships. You can talk about them if you'd like to, no pressure at any level, but we can skip right to the lessons as well. Like, what are the biggest takeaways and the biggest lessons since COVID when you've been building this business? It's growing rapidly. You've had some hard times, some great times. Like, what are the biggest lessons or takeaways that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I think so in 2020, when I, quote unquote, gave myself permission to change, that was due to my wife getting sick with COVID. She's what's known as a COVID long hauler. In 2020, when she got COVID, she was bedridden for 80% of the time. For a whole year, she was in bed. And people didn't really know, the doctors didn't really know what was going on with that. And I remember it was about the time that 75 Hard program was a thing. And I said, hey, I'm gonna do it. She was like, why are you doing this now in the midst of chaos? Like there's like our it was crazy. I mean, I was having to cook every meal. Housekeepers were coming. Like I was having to clean. I was having to take care of the kids. My wife's sick in bed, and I'm gonna go and do this 75 Hard program. And it really just it proved to that when things get tough, that I have the ability to buckle down and get through things. As well as it was very motivating for me. It was funny. This coach I talked about, the emotional intelligence coach, she said, "So what are you going to do when Jen gets healthy?" I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "This is a lot. What's going to happen when she's not sick anymore? Because she's going to get better." And I was like, "Wow, that's really something to think about." And so as I Spencer 2.0 was born through the myth things, I really was to figure out a way to just keep. There was obviously times to quit, and the blows just kept coming. Over the course of the last 16 months now, I lost my aunt to cancer, my mom to suicide, my sister to cancer, as well as my cousin to a heart attack. And these were, I only have three living relatives that are still here with me. And Chris, it really made me realize how precious life is and how really, you can't wait. There's people that are waiting. There's people that are like, get to this tomorrow. I'll change tomorrow. I will start exercising, or I'll start meditating, or I'll start saving, or whatever these goals are that you're looking for. And tomorrow, I mean, I don't know if it's just because of the age I'm at, but it's really, really strange. Like one of my wife's good friends, her husband that she's been married to for 7 years, last week was diagnosed with a brain cancer and died 7 days later. I mean, it was just like that. It was quick. And, it really puts into perspective that we're not promised tomorrow. And essentially, like, I use that to motivate me to, like, every day get off your ass. Not that I'm a lazy person, but like, let's go do it. Let's go make some changes. And so I guess there's been a lot of lessons. The one lesson that I consistently always repeat in my head is just to continue to keep pushing, because now that I've gotten like a taste, just a small taste of the success, Chris, it's all it's taken, man. It's like, I've gotten a taste of what it's like to live a finer lifestyle, to be able to not be concerned about cash, to be able to travel with my family. Now it's time to just really take this thing to the next level. And also, we talked about
loss. Sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes a loss or a traumatic event is what pushes us to allowing ourselves to be different, right? And allows us to change our external environment. And for you, you've had not just one, you've had several. Did you have any type of mindset issues or anything that kept creeping in, maybe self-doubt or imposter syndrome as you were going through this journey, as you just had after blow? Because I imagine all those losses in your family didn't happen the same day, right? I imagine they were spread out. So did you have anything like that where you started to second guess your journey or having imposter syndrome? And how did you overcome it?
Of course, I think every successful person has. I always kind of think of it as the devil and the angel, the successful voice, and it's the voice of self-doubt on the shoulders. And to me, what I personally feel, it's always a volume. It's the volume that's there. Every successful person is going to have that volume, that voice that's saying, you're not worth it. You can't do it. Why are you trying this? Look at the history, dude. Like, if you were successful, you would have been able to do it by now. Those type of things. And to me, I have that self-doubt sometimes, but it's a volume level. And I feel like the more successful I become, the higher the successful volume is turned up. The other piece of this too is I believe that you need to surround yourself with successful people that are supporting you. My wife is my biggest cheerleader. She's the one that will tell when she knows things are getting rough within business, or there's challenges that I'm going through. She is always the one that's saying, if anybody can figure this out, it's going to be you. I've seen you do it. And she knows that if I have to go into start working longer hours, I always say, hey, I got to be in the lab longer. I'm like a scientist back here. And being able to figure out how to fix things, because sometimes fixing your business or dealing with challenges in your business is not super clear cut on how to fix it. The other piece of this too is about that same time, Chris, I hired yourself and Patrick and coaches. I have 4 coaches now that I'm able to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey man, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this in my personal life. I'm struggling this with in my business, whatever the case is. Like, how can I get past this? And to be able to be surrounded by people that have either been there, I always kind of think of it as a trail guide. If somebody's going to hike to the top of Mount Everest, if I was going to do that, I would hire somebody that's been there to the top several times. I don't want to hire somebody that, or I don't want to do it on my own. That's dumb. And so I think for me, it's just about being smarter, and making better decisions as you, I guess, start to stack up your wealth, start to become more successful. It's about doing the smart thing and not letting your ego lead the way.
I think you nailed it when you talked about emotional intelligence. I think that's something that we should all focus on a little bit more. I always said, whatever you water grows, whatever you ignore dies. And I think if you're not focusing on developing your emotional intelligence and getting better at that, it's easy to let ego or pride or a stubborn moment jump in and like screw up everything you've been building. So I think it's powerful to know that, as well as I think some of us are predispositioned to almost like from genetics or just from our past, know that, hey, I tend to be triggered by certain things, and learning how to stay away from it. So cool. The big takeaways I heard from there, Spencer, is really, number one, you had an identity upgrade at some point where you just saw yourself differently as you started making decisions like the person you wanted to become, not the person you thought you were or who you were currently. You said, I'm starting to think like this person. I'm acting like this person. I have a better swagger, I got a better attitude, right? I work harder when I work smarter, right? You also had this moment where it sounds like you gave yourself permission for the first time to be successful, rather than saying, hey, this is where I grew up, this is my environment, I can't get out of it. Someone took the lid off your jar, whether it was yourself or maybe just pressure from having all this loss in your life. And either way, you started to climb out of that jar, which was beautiful. But yeah, and I just really appreciate you being here. I know we talked about a lot of different stuff today. It wasn't super organized. I'll take full responsibility for that. But I like to let it kind of go where it needs to go. My big takeaways from you here is, one, your homework is to go read Built to Sell. Come back to me afterward. I think you're going to thank me. And I think understanding not only that I'm building something, like you already got to your first milestone. Your next milestone, instead of being $1 million agency, could be a $2 million agency, maybe. Your other milestone could be, let's make this thing so efficient where it can run without me, that it's powerful. It's got a great prospecting system. We have the ability to solve for path to purchase to get people to buy. We're going to crush it and have great retention. The business doesn't need me to operate, and it's fully sellable. So rather than going after another $1 million in revenue, why don't we go after a $7 million exit? Like, I think that's a kind of cool way. And if you say, hey, I'm going after a $2 million agency, you're going to make certain decisions. You're going to let that almost be the compass that guides your decisions and your thoughts, compared to, I'm going to build this up to $1 million in profit where I can have a 7x exit for where we are today in the market, especially if it's financeable. There's a lot of people out there buying those agencies, especially niche like that. I think that'll change the way you make decisions. It'll change the way you make hires. It'll change the focus on the SOPs. It may, so just challenge you to think a little bit bigger, because that's what you could do. And once you have that money, that's how you hit that 5-year retirement goal. You don't hit a retirement goal by getting your business from $1 million to $2 million.
Yeah.
You get your retirement goal by, in the early retirement, like super early, like you're talking about, from having a large amount of money all at one time, right? And I think that's the key to all of this. And me, I have that perspective because that's the business I'm in. I'm exit hunting. I'm going after what we call surges of income. But if I can share that with you, that would be huge. Well, thanks for sharing your takeaways. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for telling us more about your life, your agency. Thanks for letting me challenge you a little bit on the call and talk about your business specifically. Any last word of wisdom that you would like all these listeners or people watching on YouTube to walk away with today, Spencer?
Yeah, I would say where you currently are. So when I was Spencer 1.0, or where if you're already Chris 5.0, you can change. I'm giving you all permission to make changes. It's never too late. A lot of times people think, oh, I'm 45 or whatever your age is. I can't change. This is just who I am. It is what it is. And I hate that saying, man, it isn't what it is. You can change and you can be who you want to be. It is real. It is real. If you put your mind to it and you surround yourself with like-minded people, you can be that guy, the person you want to be right there.
Right there. I thought about this quote. It was in my slide deck from this weekend. For those of you listening, not watching, it says, it's very hard to show up as the person you want to be when you are surrounded by an environment that makes you feel like a person you aren't.
Yeah.
Such a powerful thing to think about. Like, you talked about it, how you had an identity upgrade, you changed your environment, and you saw a different result. So I think that's powerful. I think it's time to make some hard decisions. It's time to double down. It's time to give yourself permission. It's time to commit to a better life than you have now. And any of you who are already affluent or comfortable, that doesn't mean anything. Shoot for something bigger. One other thing I'll share with you real quick. This is a very powerful quote from my slide deck. There's a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And it's a really beautiful book written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And if you read the book, you'll notice that author is the same author that was the co-author of Dan Sullivan and Who Not How. It's really a beautiful book. What I'd like to share with you, anybody listen to this quote, anybody watching can see it, but I talked about raising the stakes. And here's the quote. Most people are living small, not because they lack the inherent talent, but because their situation is not demanding more of them, right? Another quote here is you're either rising up or shrinking down due to the demands of your situation. You have to get uncomfortable and raise the stakes or you'll never achieve greatness. So I think part of this is also making a commitment, and you need to have like almost like some sort of punishment, not just a reward for doing amazing things, but also have a punishment. If you don't make your situation in your life more demanding, you'll never rise to the occasion. The occasion, that saying, rise the occasion, has to be someone's under duress. They're under a demanding situation. As humans, we'll never put enough effort in to rise the occasion unless the occasion is there. So I don't know why I said that, but it reminded me of what you just said. So that's why I wanted to share it with you. But raise the stakes. I think, Spencer, if you didn't raise the stakes, then you wouldn't have gotten here.
Of course, man. I'd still be sitting there, wishing, hoping, trying to figure it all out, probably only making, $10,000 a month and wouldn't be where we are today.
Which 10 grand a month's good, but I mean, to be clear, that's 10 grand a month in revenue for the agency. And you don't get to keep all that, right? So
yeah.
100%. Well, Spencer, thanks for being with us today. We'll bring you back again another time after you rebuilt the cell. And I want to hear how your mindset shifted. I want to hear the game plan of what you're going to do to get this bad boy running without you 100%. I'll be seeing you again on the next call we have for Rank Masters. Anybody interested in Rank Masters, the agency, you can go to rankmasters.com, book a call with Taylor and our team. She'll talk to you about how you can work with us. But really enjoyed your conversation today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, man.